The grand ballroom of the New York City Charity Gala was filled with the hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, and the occasional burst of laughter. Attendees dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits milled about, exchanging pleasantries and networking. The event was glamorous, with glittering chandeliers casting a warm glow over the room. At the center of it all stood the stage, adorned with the logo of the night's cause, mental health and education advocacy. As the program progressed, the MC took to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker needs no introduction," she announced. "Please welcome Tiffany Trump." Tiffany, dressed in a sleek navy blue gown, walked onto the stage, her composure calm, but her nerves visible in the way she clutched her note cards. She smiled graciously at the audience before beginning her speech. Her words were heartfelt as she spoke about her passion for the cause, recounting personal stories and emphasizing the importance of providing resources for those in need. Despite her sincerity, a few murmurs began rippling through the crowd. The whispers started subtly but grew louder. A few voices, unmistakable in their tone, carried words of criticism. "What does she really know about this cause?" someone muttered. "Is this just another PR move?" Another voice chimed in, louder this time. The remarks cut through the air, their sharpness palpable even to those seated farther back. Tiffany paused for a fraction of a second, her calm exterior faltering. She took a breath and continued speaking, but the undercurrent of judgment in the room was impossible to ignore. For a moment it seemed as though the evening's focus had shifted from the cause to skepticism about her intentions. Seated at a nearby table, Barron Trump observed the scene intently. His usually quiet demeanor was replaced with a focused expression, his brow furrowed as he listened to the murmurs. He watched as his sister stood on stage, her poise unwavering despite the subtle hostility. Something inside him stirred, a mix of protectiveness and indignation. As the whispers grew louder, Barron made his decision. Without a word, he stood from his chair, the sudden movement drawing the attention of those around him. The murmurs ceased as people turned to look at him, curiosity spreading through the room. Barron adjusted his suit, his posture confident, and began walking toward the stage. The crowd grew silent, their attention now fully on him. Tiffany, noticing her brother's approach, looked at him with a mix of surprise and relief. Reaching the microphone, Barron gently took the stand. His voice was steady, his gaze unwavering as he addressed the audience. "I think it's time we set the record straight," he began, his words cutting through the silence. The room held its collective breath, the moment electric with anticipation. Barron's unexpected move had shifted the entire atmosphere, and no one could predict what he was about to say next. The room was silent as Barron Trump stood before the audience, his presence commanding attention. He took a brief moment to compose himself, his expression calm, yet determined. As he spoke, his voice carried an unexpected strength, drawing everyone's focus. "I've listened to the comments tonight," Barron began, his words measured but firm. "And I can't stay silent when I know the truth about my sister, Tiffany. It's easy to criticize someone from a distance, to make assumptions without knowing the full story. But let me tell you who Tiffany really is." The crowd leaned in, their curiosity piqued by his calm but resolute tone. Tiffany stood behind him, her hands clasped tightly together. Her eyes shimmered with emotion as she watched her younger brother, who was rarely one to speak out publicly, stand up for her in such a bold way. Barron continued, "Tiffany is one of the most compassionate people I know. She doesn't do this for recognition or applause. She does it because she cares. She has spent countless hours working on these initiatives, reaching out to organizations, and making sure the resources actually help those who need them most. I've seen her put her heart into this work, even when no one else was watching." He paused, scanning the room. His gaze was steady, unflinching, as if daring anyone to challenge him. "When you sit here and judge her, you're ignoring the sacrifices she's made to stand here tonight and speak for something she believes in. You're not just criticizing her, you're criticizing someone who is trying to make a difference." The audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The weight of Barron's words began to settle over them, softening the edges of their skepticism. His voice carried an undeniable sincerity that was difficult to dismiss. Barron then shared a personal story. "I remember a time when Tiffany found out about a young girl who couldn't afford mental health treatment. She didn't just donate money. She met with the girl and her family. making sure they had access to the help they needed. She followed up for months, ensuring everything was in place. That's who she is. She doesn't just talk about making a difference. She lives it. The room fell even quieter. Many in the crowd lowered their eyes, perhaps reflecting on their own assumptions. Tiffany, standing just behind Barron, felt a wave of gratitude and pride wash over her. She hadn't expected him to defend her so passionately, but here he was, dismantling every criticism with poise and heartfelt conviction. Barron took a step back from the microphone, his tone softening. Before you judge someone, take the time to see their actions, not just what you think you know. Tiffany is here because she cares, and I think she deserves your respect, not your doubt. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Slowly, a ripple of applause began to spread through the room. It started softly, then grew louder as more people joined in. The energy in the room shifted, and for the first time that evening, Tiffany felt the support she had long hoped for. Barron turned to her and gave her a small, reassuring nod. Tiffany's eyes filled with tears, but this time they weren't tears of frustration or hurt. They were tears of gratitude for a brother who had reminded her, and everyone else, that kindness and courage could silence even the harshest critics. As Barron stepped away from the microphone, the applause swelled, building into a standing ovation. The crowd, which moments earlier had been filled with murmurs of skepticism and doubt, was now a sea of admiration and respect. The sound was deafening, a powerful testament to the impact of his words. Tiffany stood frozen for a moment, overwhelmed by the sudden shift in the room. The tears she had fought so hard to suppress now rolled freely down her cheeks. She looked at Barron, who had quietly returned to his seat, his expression calm but with a faint smile that spoke volumes. He had done what few would have expected. He had turned a moment of judgment into one of unity. The MC stepped back to the microphone, her voice slightly shaky as she tried to regain composure. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her tone filled with emotion, "what we've just witnessed is a reminder of the power of family, truth, and courage. Let's show our appreciation for both Tiffany and Barron Trump." The applause surged again, echoing through the grand hall. Attendees who had previously whispered criticisms were now clapping with enthusiasm, some even wiping away tears. A prominent philanthropist in the front row stood, raising his hand to address the crowd. "I've been to countless events like this," he began, his voice steady, "but I've rarely seen someone speak with such authenticity and conviction. Barron, you've shown us all the importance of standing up for what's right, and Tiffany, your work is nothing short of inspiring." The audience erupted into cheers, their energy transformed into something electric. The once critical murmurs were now words of praise and encouragement. People began calling out, "We believe in you, Tiffany," and "Keep going." The wave of support was overwhelming, and Tiffany, who had felt so alone just moments ago, now felt embraced by the crowd's collective warmth. Stepping back to the microphone, Tiffany took a deep breath, her voice steady despite the emotion swelling in her chest. "Thank you," she began, her words heartfelt. "I didn't expect tonight to unfold like this, but I am deeply grateful for your support. And to my brother Barron, your words mean more to me than I can express. You reminded me why I do this, even when it feels impossible." The crowd hung on to every word, their admiration for her growing with each passing moment. Tiffany continued, "This cause isn't about me or my family. It's about the millions of people who need our help. It's about creating a future where no one feels forgotten, where everyone has access to the resources they need to thrive." Her words resonated deeply, and the audience responded with another round of applause. The energy in the room was now one of unity and hope, a far cry from the skepticism that had clouded the earlier part of the evening. Barron watched from his seat, his usual quiet demeanor unchanged, but there was a glimmer of pride in his eyes. He had done what he felt was right, and the result was more than he could have hoped for. Tiffany's confidence had been restored, and the crowd's reaction spoke volumes about the power of truth and authenticity. As the applause finally began to die down, Tiffany smiled through her tears. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt truly seen, not as a figure attached to her family's name, but as someone who genuinely cared about making a difference. Barron's bold defense had not only transformed the room, it had transformed her resolve, solidifying her commitment to her cause. In that moment, she knew they had created something unforgettable. Backstage, away from the applauding crowd and the bright stage lights, Tiffany leaned against a wall trying to collect herself. The weight of the evening had left her emotionally drained, yet she felt a warmth she hadn't experienced in a long time. Tears still glistened in her eyes as she replayed Barron's words in her mind. It wasn't just his defense, it was the sincerity, the courage, and the love that had carried her through one of the most difficult moments of her public life. The sound of footsteps broke her thoughts, and she looked up to see Barron approaching. His usual quiet, reserved demeanor was intact, but his eyes held a softness that spoke volumes. Tiffany pushed herself off the wall and immediately wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into a tight hug. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't know what I would have done without you tonight." Barron hesitated for a moment, then patted her back awkwardly, his version of a hug. "You don't need to thank me," he said, his tone calm but firm. "I just did what I thought was right." Tiffany pulled back slightly, looking at her younger brother with a mixture of admiration and gratitude. "You didn't have to, though. You stood up for me when I didn't even know how to stand up for myself. That means everything to me." Barron shrugged, glancing away as if to downplay his actions. "You've always been there for me," he said quietly. "I wasn't going to let anyone tear you down. Not tonight. Not ever." The words struck a chord deep within Tiffany, and she felt her throat tighten with emotion. Memories of their childhood flooded her mind, how she had helped him navigate life in the public eye, how she had always tried to shield him from the harsh scrutiny of the world. She had never expected the roles to reverse, but here they were, and Barron had risen to the occasion in a way she could never have imagined. "You know," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "you're a lot braver than I was at your age. I would have never had the courage to do what you did tonight." Barron met her gaze, his expression steady. "You didn't need to back then," he replied. "You were always the strong one. I just learned from you." The simplicity of his words hit her harder than any grand gesture ever could. Tiffany felt a surge of pride, not just in Barron but in the bond they shared, a bond that had been tested and strengthened over the years. In that moment, she realized that no matter how challenging life became, they would always have each other to lean on. As they stood there, a knock on the door interrupted their moment. A staff member peeked in, letting them know that the next segment of the gala was starting soon. Tiffany nodded, straightening up and wiping her eyes. She turned back to Barron, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you," she said again, her voice steadier this time. "Not just for tonight, but for always being my brother." Barron gave her a rare, small smile. "Always." With that, Tiffany walked back toward the stage, her confidence renewed. Barron watched her go, feeling a quiet sense of pride. Tonight wasn't just about defending Tiffany. It was about reminding her and everyone else of the strength she carried and the love that bound them as a family. The night after the gala, the story of Barron Trump's bold defense of his sister began spreading like wildfire. Social media platforms lit up with clips of his speech, accompanied by hashtags like Barron Defends Tiffany and A Family First. People across the world were captivated, not just by the drama of the evening, but by the sincerity and courage Barron had shown. The moment was being hailed as a powerful reminder of the strength of family and the importance of standing up for one another. As Tiffany scrolled through her phone in her living room, she was overwhelmed by the messages pouring in. Strangers shared their stories of sibling bonds and how they had been inspired by Barron's actions. Some wrote about how his words had reminded them to reconcile with family members they hadn't spoken to in years. Others praised Tiffany for her grace under pressure, calling her a role model for staying composed in the face of criticism. Tears welled up in Tiffany's eyes as she read the heartfelt messages. It wasn't just the public support that moved her. It was the realization that her brother's actions had created a ripple effect, spreading kindness and unity far beyond the gala. What had started as a moment of vulnerability had turned into something far greater, a reminder of the power of compassion and courage. Meanwhile, Barron, ever the introvert, was less aware of the storm he had stirred. He spent the day quietly, catching up on homework and reading through a few texts from friends who had seen the viral clips. When Tiffany called him to share how much his actions were resonating with people, he simply replied, "I'm glad it helped." That was Barron, never seeking the spotlight, but always ready to do the right thing. The impact of the night didn't stop with social media. News outlets picked up the story, airing segments about the moment that had taken the gala by storm. Headlines like Barron Trump's heartfelt defense sparks national dialogue and family unity takes center stage at gala dominated the news cycle. Even critics who often found fault with the Trump family found themselves acknowledging the genuine nature of Barron's actions. The story also brought a surge of attention to Tiffany's initiatives. Donations to her causes spiked, with people inspired by her resilience and dedication. Organizations reached out, offering to collaborate on projects for mental health and education advocacy. Tiffany felt an immense sense of gratitude, not just for the support, but for the chance to make a bigger impact than she ever thought possible. One of the most emotional moments came when a woman sent a video message to Tiffany. In it, she explained how her daughter had been inspired by Tiffany's grace and Barron's courage. "My daughter struggles with anxiety and often feels like no one understands her," the woman said, tears in her eyes. "But after watching you two, she said she felt hopeful for the first time in a long time. She said, 'If they can be brave, so can I.' Thank you for that." Tiffany watched the video with tears streaming down her face, her heart full of gratitude. She immediately sent a response, thanking the woman and her daughter for their words. "Your message means more than I can say," Tiffany wrote. "Please tell your daughter that she is braver than she knows, and she has so much to offer this world." As the days went on, the ripple effect of that one evening continued to grow. It wasn't just about Tiffany or Barron. It was about the power of love, family, and standing up for what's right. What had begun as a moment of criticism and doubt had transformed into a beacon of hope, reminding people everywhere of the importance of unity and compassion. For Tiffany and Barron, it was a night they would never forget, and for the world, it was a lesson in humanity. Days after the gala, the energy of the event still lingered. For Tiffany, it felt as though the world had shifted beneath her feet. Her inbox was flooded with messages from supporters, donations to her initiatives had reached an all-time high, and organizations she had long admired were reaching out to collaborate. But what stuck with her the most were the heartfelt messages from strangers who had seen the viral moment between her and Barron. One evening, as Tiffany sat in her living room with her laptop open, she read a message from a young woman named Elena. "I've always felt too afraid to speak up for myself," Elena wrote. "But watching your brother stand up for you and seeing how you carried yourself with grace gave me the courage to confront something in my life that I've been avoiding for years. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like." Tiffany felt tears pooling in her eyes as she reread the message. These were the moments that reminded her why she had started her advocacy work in the first place. She picked up her phone and dialed Barron, who answered after the second ring. "Barron," she began, her voice trembling with emotion, "you have no idea how much what you did that night has meant to so many people." On the other end of the line, Barron's voice was calm and steady. "I didn't do it for attention, Tiffany," he replied. "I did it because it was the right thing to do." "I know," she said, smiling despite her tears. "And that's what makes it so powerful. People saw your sincerity, your heart. They saw something real in a world where that's so rare. You've inspired more people than you can imagine." Barron was quiet for a moment before replying, "I just wanted to remind everyone of who you are. You've always been the strong one, Tiff. I'm glad people finally see that." As they spoke, Tiffany felt the weight of the past few weeks lifting. Barron's words reminded her of their bond as siblings, a bond that had weathered public scrutiny, family challenges, and personal doubts. She knew that no matter what lay ahead, they would always have each other's backs. Later that evening, Tiffany shared Elena's message on her social media, accompanied by a heartfelt caption. "Strength comes in many forms. Sometimes it's speaking up, and sometimes it's standing by those you love. My brother reminded me of that, and I hope we can all find ways to show strength for one another." The post quickly went viral, with thousands of comments pouring in. People shared their own stories of family, courage, and resilience, turning the moment into something larger than just one event. The story of Barron's defense and Tiffany's grace had struck a universal chord, reminding people of the power of love and support. As the week came to a close, Tiffany and Barron attended a follow-up event together. This time, the crowd welcomed them with warm smiles and genuine applause. People approached them not with skepticism, but with admiration, eager to share how their story had impacted them. One attendee, a father of 3, approached Barron and shook his hand firmly. "What you did that night wasn't just brave," he said. "It was an example for my kids. You showed them how to stand up for what matters." "Thank you," Barron nodded, his expression as humble as ever. "I'm glad it made a difference," he replied simply. As the event wrapped up, Tiffany looked at Barron, her heart full of pride. The priceless reaction of the crowd, the messages from strangers, the ripple effect of that one evening, all of it had reminded her of the power of standing together. She realized that this wasn't just about her work or her family's name. It was about something much bigger, the ability to inspire kindness and courage in a world that desperately needed it. And in that moment, she knew they had succeeded. Tiffany and Barron's story reminds us of the incredible power of love, courage, and standing up for one another. It shows how a single act of support can transform doubt into hope, division into unity, and inspire countless lives in the process. If this story moved you, take a moment to reflect on the people in your life who might need your support. Whether it's standing up for them, offering a kind word, or simply being there, your actions can make a world of difference. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that celebrate kindness, family, and the human spirit. Together, let's create a ripple of positivity that reaches far and wide. Stay inspired, stay kind,